All right, and welcome back to Economics with Mr. Altieri, Fairfield Prep. This is section 1.2, the economic way of thinking. We're actually going to break this video down into two different parts. First, we're going to deal with the 5 core economic ideas, and then we are going to deal with some of the other principles of economics, the ideas of macro versus microeconomics, positive versus normative statements, correlations, and the like. But to start, we're going to deal with the 5 core economic ideas. Now, the first core economic idea is very simply that people make rational choices. Now, I can already hear the chuckles. We're going to get into this. We're going to talk a little bit about what a rational choice really is versus what we perceive of it to be. No, not all people are rational. We know that both psychologically and economically, that people don't always make what we perceive as rational decisions. We're going to talk about the definition and sort of explain why, according to economics, people always make rational choices. Secondly is that cost is incurred all the time, and cost is what you must give up in order to get something. Finally, everything has a benefit, or third, everything has a benefit, and benefit is what you gain by making a decision. The fourth principle is that rational choices are made on the margin. Now, the margin is a concept that is going to be very important to us. There will be a lot of different things that are determined by the margin, and the margin will be one of the most important places to look as we go on in economics. It will actually be the only place we really look at certain points in time. And there is the issue with doing these videos at school. So sorry, apologize for that. Finally, to make choices, people will respond to incentives, and we'll talk about those incentives a little bit further in depth in a minute. But quickly understand that incentives are not always things that make you do something. Sometimes they incentivize not taking an action. But the first concept is this concept of rational choices. So what is a rational choice? A rational choice is a choice that uses the available resources to best achieve the objective of the person making the choice. Now, what the heck is that? Now, first of all, let's understand something about this definition. If it's designed to, or if a rational choice is a choice that seeks to achieve the objective of the person making the choice, then that decision, then rational decisions are always made apparently in the self-interest. Okay? And that's an important sort of thing to understand. But to take a step back, let's look at rational choices as the available resources. People using available resources to make choices. Now, that's where we start to understand that rational for economics is not necessarily rational for life. Economics does not benefit from the ability to use hindsight. Economics does not benefit from the fact that some are more intelligent than others, that some are more resourceful than others. You use what resources are available to you, and that makes your decision rational. That's one of the beautiful things and one of the crummy things about economics all at the same time, right? So it means that your and my decision could both be opposite. We can decide to do the exact opposite things, but as long as both of us used our available resources to achieve our objective, we made a rational choice. There's a little bit more to it, and we'll get into that in a minute, dealing with marginal benefit versus marginal cost, but we'll wait until we get to the whole margin idea. But it brings up this idea of that age-old argument of Plato versus Aristotle. If a decision's made in the self-interest, if all decisions are rational, and a rational decision is always in the self-interest. How do we ever do anything that's in the social interest? Well, that's where this Plato-Aristotle argument comes up. And if you look at the earlier of the philosophers, Aristotle, you see that Aristotle basically said that if you don't take care of the self, you'll lose the ability to take care of the society. So essentially what Aristotle would argue is that in order to make decisions in the social interest, we have to make our decisions in the self-interest. We have to do things for ourselves, because that's the only way society can be taken care of. If you look at Plato, Plato seemed to have a little bit more, oddly enough, faith in humanity. And Plato believed, or maybe less faith in humanity, it depends on how you look at it, right? But Plato believed that, and he's quoted as saying, communal life demands the subordination of individual wishes and aims, right? And so basically what Plato said is, look, if we want to live in a community, if we want to live in a society that can function as such, we need to forget about our individual wants and make decisions in the self-interest as decisions in the social interest, essentially, right? So what he's saying is, if you want to do what's right for yourself, you have to do what's right for society, because what's right for society becomes what's right for the self, right? Opposite ways of looking at it. And it's not so much that you understand Plato versus Aristotle as you understand this concept that, look, rational choices are choices made in the self-interest. What a decision in the self-interest will vary from person to person. It's not even just as simple as two philosophies. There are so many different philosophies on what a decision, what the right decisions are, and what the self-interest is. And so we look at this, it's not so easy as rational. It's not so easy as being able to look at it and say, you know, that was a rational decision, or you are rational when you make that decision. It's a lot more complicated than that, and that's why it's important to understand, because economics needs to make it simpler, right? So we need to operate in a vacuum, and we can't consider your opinion versus my opinion. We have to consider only that we assume that you will always use the available resources, and that you will always make a decision where the benefit outweighs the cost. Very simply, or is at least as valuable as the cost, excuse me. Now, back to moving on, right? So the next concept, the next core economic idea is this idea of cost. What exactly is a cost? Well, there are a lot of different types of costs. You have fixed costs, you have variable costs, you have total costs, you have marginal costs, you have accounting costs, you have within a business many different types of costs, right? That are subcategories of even the ones just mentioned, right? But for now, I want to focus on simply two different types of costs, okay? And probably not the two you expect, right? So the first is this idea of an opportunity cost, because in reality the opportunity cost is quite frankly the only important cost when deciding, the only important cost to consider when deciding whether or not to partake in an activity. Now, what the heck does that mean? Why is it the only one? We'll get into that, right? But what is an opportunity cost? An opportunity cost is the best thing you must give up in order to get something, aka the highest valued alternative foregone. What did I not get to do because I made the decision that I made? Right? That's very simple. And it takes money off the table. Going back to that lesson in the last time you were listening to me, right? You have to take money off the table here. This isn't about, and that's why opportunity cost is probably one of the more important ones to discuss, because it takes money off the table. It's not how much did this cost me. It's not how many dollars did I have to give up in order to make this decision. It's what didn't I get to do with those dollars? Or what didn't I get to do with that time? Or what didn't I get to do with that resource that I used to partake in this activity that I did choose to partake in, right? And that's the opportunity cost, is the highest valued alternative that one had to forego in order to partake in an activity, okay? Now, the next cost is the sunk cost. The sunk cost is, by definition, a previously incurred and irreversible cost. I love sunk costs, right? Because sunk costs are, they cause so many arguments. And they really cause, especially young learners of economics, they cause this emotion to come out about economics. Because a sunk cost is something you can't get back, right? So if it's something you can't get back, it's already been paid in the past and you can't get it back, right? There is absolutely no reason that when making a decision about your future, you consider that. You can't get it back, right? It's the most often ignored cost by individuals. Now, that's sort of a funky statement because really it's the most often unignored cost, right? But it's the idea of a sunk cost, the definition of a sunk cost is what gets ignored by people. The fact that sunk costs exist is what gets ignored by people. And by ignoring the fact that sunk costs exist, they fail to ignore the costs they incurred. Okay? For those of you that followed me there, great. For those of you that didn't, just follow along with the examples that I'm going to go through. Okay? The first example is this idea that you purchase a non-refundable plane ticket. Okay, let's say the plane ticket's to Florida, round trip, $260. Okay, please don't start arguing with me about your ability to use Orbitz more efficiently than me and get a lower price ticket. Just go with the example, right? So you've got this $260 round trip plane ticket to Florida. You are going to go in 2 weeks. Okay, and you're going to go for a weekend, and your buddy calls you up tonight and says, hey, Joey, listen, I just scored us tickets to go see a concert, and it's your favorite band, right? For me, that would be the one I want to see most in concert is Dispatch, right? I just scored us Dispatch tickets. For you, just insert band, right? Next weekend, Saturday night, you coming? And most of you sit there and you're thinking, oh, crumb, I just paid $260. I can't give up. I can't give up that $260. I gotta go to Florida, right? Now, I don't even care why you're going to Florida, right? I mean, I will in a minute, but I don't right now, right? Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that you're going to Florida to make a trip that you can make anytime. Okay, and it's an important trip, but not terribly important, right? And really, it doesn't matter right now why you're going down there. Okay, what matters is that you understand that that $260 that you spent absolutely must be ignored. You can't get it back. You've already paid it, and you can't get it back. The plane ticket's in your name, so the FAA will not let you transfer it to anyone under any circumstances. Trust me, I've tried before. You can't do it, right? So you can't consider that money. The only thing you can consider is the marginal benefit and the marginal cost of moving forward, right? Or which has the higher opportunity cost, going to Florida or going to the concert. In essence, if you are foregoing something, if you are foregoing the concert in order to go to Florida, and that concert you place a higher value on than Florida, then going to the concert has a higher opportunity cost. Excuse me, going to Florida has a higher opportunity cost, because if the value of the concert is greater than the value of the trip to Florida, then going to Florida will have a higher opportunity cost, because it will have a higher cost of something that had to be foregone in order to partake in the trip to Florida, right? So again, that will be up for you to decide whether one is more valuable than the other, right? But when weighing this decision, you can't consider the $260. It's a sunk cost. You can't get it back. You must ignore it. Now, another example. This one might be a little easier for you, right? You go to a movie theater. You buy a $10 ticket. Again, don't argue with me the cost of the ticket. Just go with the example, right? Your ticket costs you $10, and you are going to abide by all rules, regulations, and laws of the state of Connecticut as you go to this movie theater, which means that you have no viable alternatives to this movie within the walls, the confines of the movie theater. Okay? You'll understand what I mean in a minute, right? So you get in there, you pay your $10 for the movie ticket. We're going to leave alone whether you bought any concessions. You are $10 down. You cannot get your $10 back. That is a sunk cost. 5 minutes into this hour and 45-minute movie, you look at your watch and you realize that you're 5 minutes in and you know already that this is the worst movie you're ever going to see in your whole life. Many of us have experienced that before, right? You sit down and you just know, that's it. I ain't getting this is going to be the worst movie ever. But most of us, for some reason, fail to ignore the $10 that we spent, and we say, I got to get my money's worth. I'm going to sit through this. I spent $10, I'm sitting through it, right? And what you realize now is that if you think about it this way, if you think about that $10 as a sunk cost, you can't get it back. The only thing you have control over is how you spend that next hour and 40 minutes. You got an hour and 40 minutes left. What has the higher opportunity cost? Leaving the theater and having fun with that hour and 40 minutes, or sitting through the movie and missing out on what you could be doing with that hour and 40 minutes, right? Under these circumstances, you realize that the movie's awful. So the opportunity cost of sitting there is far greater than the opportunity cost of leaving, because most of us don't place a very high benefit, a very high value to sitting through a crummy movie, right? So you have to ignore sunk costs. We'll get more into that a little bit later as we talk about some of these concepts as they relate to other economic principles. But for now, we'll move on to a little bit more simple concept to understand. That's benefit. Benefit is the gain or pleasure that an activity brings, right? That is a whole lot easier. There aren't many benefits, right? There are not, you know, there certainly are some things that can benefit, right? But there aren't many. The problem with benefit comes in trying to define it, right? How do we place value on a benefit all the time? Because benefits are not always monetary, right? And so it's not always easy to say, well, that brought me $5 worth of benefit, right? What does that mean? You ever said that before? Nobody does. I've never said it, right? So we need to understand that will be a little bit difficult. We're going to take a look at that in a later chapter. Okay, so for now we're going to leave it alone. Just understand that a benefit is a major importance when you're learning economics. Now, fourth is the margin. This idea that rational choices are always made on the margin. So what is the margin? The margin is the incremental addition or subtraction of units of benefit, right? So we compare all the relevant alternatives systematically and incrementally. Again, one more unit of a good or service, as opposed to one more unit of a different good or service, right? So systematically meaning I'm comparing the benefits of each. Incrementally meaning I'm not just comparing the benefits of this total number of units, I'm comparing the benefits of one more unit as opposed to one more unit of another good or service, okay? And we'll have some time to discuss that later on. And finally, that people respond to incentives when they make decisions, right? An incentive is a reward or a penalty. A carrot or a stick is oftentimes how they are referenced, that encourages or discourages an action. The carrot would represent the marginal benefit, right? Because something with a high marginal benefit would be an incentive, something that you go chasing after. The marginal cost would be the stick, right? A stick is not something that most people go chasing after. They run away from sticks, right? We don't like getting hit by sticks, so we try to run away from a higher marginal cost, okay? So incentives can either make us do or not do something. The catch is that there is this law of diminishing marginal benefit, and the law of diminishing marginal benefit states that there is a tendency for marginal benefit to decrease with each additional unit of a good or service once a certain number of units are consumed, right? So it's not all the time. It's not that if I consume 2 units, my marginal benefit will go down, right? But at a certain point, I'm going to get to a point where all of a sudden, I'm done, right? So I want you to think about it this way, right? You order a large cheese pizza from Naughty Dolphin in Fairfield, right? Now, you order this pizza, and you scarf down the first 2 or 3 bites, right? And that first has this marginal benefit. It's just huge, right? And the second pizza has the second slice has an even bigger marginal benefit, right? You love it. It is tremendous to you, right? That third piece of pizza, your marginal benefit doesn't increase necessarily, right? It depends on who you are, obviously, right? But all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that was great, right? But now I'm starting to get full. And then the fourth slice of pizza, you realize, wait a second, my marginal benefit's actually decreasing. This fourth slice of pizza doesn't bring me the same joy that even the third did. Yeah, it's good. I still like it, right? And eventually, let's say you eat the whole pizza, right? Eventually, you're going to get to a point where actually the marginal benefit's negative because eating too many slices of pizza is going to make your stomach hurt, right? And now it's not a marginal benefit, it's a marginal cost that you incur, right? But this idea that we get to a certain point where our marginal benefit is actually going to begin to decrease with each additional unit of a good or service. Okay, now we are going to revisit this idea of incentives later with a lot of the things that we talk about. But for now, we're going to end this video on 1.2, and we're going to continue the video again after you've rested, after you've gone and done something else, or for some of you, you're just going to click on it right now. But goodbye until then.